Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here. As you heard, my name is Angus Kneale. I probably don't need to say it again. But I've been with the mill for quite some time. I am from the New York studio. We have a few studios around the world. I'm based in New York. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa. I had an unusual childhood. I used to find myself taking things apart and putting them back together again constantly. I was a bit of a menace to my mother and father, but I found that this curiosity is kind of really what's served me well in my professional career. While my friends were playing rugby and cricket, those are sports, I was making stop frame animations and playing around with electronics back at home. When I was younger, I wanted to be an architect. I then studied graphic design, and halfway through my graphic design course was seduced by visual effects. I did a complete kind of right angle, right turn, and head towards those shiny, sparkling lights. I'm part designer, part hacker, part director. But as I said, I worked for a company called The Mill. I've used this interdisciplinary spirit that I've talked about of cross-pollination to really help build the mill. So, we're artists, we're technologists, but on our core, we're artisans, we're craftspeople. We make things. We're constantly trying to reinvent ourselves as well, like constantly looking at new technologies, utilizing new ways of telling stories, reaching audiences, and just moving people. We've been experimenting with augmented reality for quite some time now. In the past few years, there's definitely been a lot more interest in it, but I can remember as far as 5-6 years ago, playing around with QR markers and codes and getting tracking working for the first time. It was a monumental feat. It was so exciting. And that all looks like child's play nowadays when you've got things like AR Studio at our fingertips. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to play a short montage of just some of our augmented reality work that we've done in the past few years. This is a good flavor of mobile AR, all the way up to some pretty advanced on-set AR that we use for virtual production. But it's all part of the same family. Let me play the video, and then they'll go into depth, quite a few of the projects that you'll see within there. Okay, so that's just a flavor, a taste of some of the work that we've done in the past year and a bit. So you've probably read this in a few places, but we definitely believe that augmented reality is the next computing platform. It's highly probable that within the next 10 years it could replace the smartphone. If you just look at the innovation that's been developed in this area, companies like Magic Leap, companies like Microsoft investing in HoloLens, it really is extraordinary, the leaps and bounds that has come in the past few years. We've been creating and innovating in this space for quite some time, but if you just look forward, it's really quite extraordinary, the possibilities that are in front of you. Now, there's a lot of different acronyms, there's a lot of different jargon, there's people talking about extended reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, but largely, they all draw from the same principles. So everything that I'm going to be showing you today is directly applicable to augmented reality, mixed reality, and extended reality. So we're drawing on decades of visual effects and design experience in order to get to where we are now. But let's start at the most accessible place, the mobile. Mobile AR is a phenomenal opportunity. What it does is it puts the hands of developers in any user that is interested. Looking at the things like AR Core from Google and AR Kit from Apple, there's an enormous amount of R&D going into this. And with people spending probably $500 to $700 every year to 2 years on their mobile devices, there is an enormous amount of technology being put into these devices. From their multiple camera sensors, IMU sensors, and the amazing screens, there's a ton of platform power here that is just untapped. There's a few experiences that show what could be done, but just the mobile phone that you have in your pocket right now is a Trojan horse, and it's just going to get better and better and better as the software gets released, and as more people innovate in this space, as more people ideate. And it's really not that difficult. We're just tapping into it. So it all changed, obviously, in the last few years when the big tech companies started to take AR seriously. I mentioned they've been working on it for quite some time, but it's been slow going, and the acceleration is just being picked up with the likes of Google and Apple. Google's been in it for quite some time, obviously with Google Glass, that had mixed reception. I think there's a lot of learnings from that as well. People have really taken that on board and understood what can actually be used from that and what can be left. Project Tango as well, phenomenal bit of technology from Google, still being utilized, still being used, still being developed upon. One of our main collaborators at the moment is Facebook. This was a really interesting experience for us because they approached us pretty early on before they launched AR Studio, and they wanted to have some bespoke content, some new launch content. So coming from the world of visual effects, you understand the fundamentals, you understand tracking, you understand 3D, you understand lighting, all the basics. But what was really interesting is working with Facebook, just how fast they were implementing these features. So one of the first things that we launched, that Facebook launched, was Justice League, was their first AR Studio piece. After that, it was Stranger Things. Then after that, it was Jurassic Park. All of these augmented reality effects added new features. So, for example, Jurassic Park was the first Facebook use of world tracking. Then just recently, we launched Ready Player One, and that was the very first use of target tracking. But going back a few months ago, I think one of my favorite pieces that we've worked on is for Game of Thrones. Now, this piece is really interesting because it basically turns the user into a White Walker. Now, there was a lot of complication to this and how we approached this, but ultimately we didn't want it just to be a generic White Walker. We wanted it to follow the shape of the person's face. We wanted to make sure that if the person was wearing glasses, the person would still be wearing glasses. So there was an enormous amount of work put into understanding what the person's biometric features were and keeping it true to themselves. This was really fun because I think from this making of, you can see a lot of similarities between the befores and afters. And I think that's one of the things that I find most exciting about this is that it's not just a one-size-fits-all filter, is it basically is way more than that, is it's completely bespoke and completely tailored to the user. So here's a quick behind the scenes. fun. If you haven't played with that, I'd definitely download it. It's really great fun. So that's the Facebook AR Studio effects. We've worked on everything from Justice League, as I said, all the way up to My Little Pony. So there's a bit of AR in there for everybody. So now moving from Facebook, what's really interesting is looking at the print companies. They've been one of the first to really adopt and really embrace this new technology. And it's quite unusual because I didn't expect that to happen. We've been working quite a lot with W Magazine, and they're basically building them as a bespoke app in itself, so not tying it to any particular platform. They wanted to own the platform. And what's really interesting is that we launched, for the September issue, we did a collector's issue where a lot of the content you could only receive if you had the AR app. So you could only unlock it if you had the AR app. Working with Stephen Klein, the photographer, it was a great experience. It was the first time he had done anything like this. But it just showed how a medium such as print can evolve and can embrace augmented reality, and how you can actually use that in order to tell stories, in order to really expand and go beyond the page of what a traditional publication can actually do. In a way, kind of keeping print relevant, because I think everyone's quite aware that print numbers are down. They're not selling nearly as many as they used to. But this really kind of shows a great synergy between brand new emerging technology and a well-established medium. Garage Magazine is another print publication that we worked with. This was, we were making filters for Snap, but page after page, we used to using the pages as triggers in order to tell stories, in order to create immersive designs, in order to create 3D designs that you could ultimately move around. It wasn't just a flat 2D shape, it was a full 3D sculpture that you could look into the page and you could move around. It was really exciting. So that's print. Now, this is when it starts getting really interesting. The head-mounted displays is ultimately where we want to be. But right now, they're expensive, they're bulky, and they're just out of everyone's reach. And you've got this chicken and egg situation of how many people are going to develop for it because there's not many people that have got it. So we've got this cycle right now where until the price point lowers, it's very much going to be in the hands of developers. But the proof of concept and what's actually been created by these devices, I don't know if anyone's actually used any of these devices, but it's really interesting at how well something like the HoloLens actually works. I was shocked the first time I put it on because I expected something quite a rudimentary experience, but all the fundamentals are there. All the basics, all the things that you need in order to have a really, truly immersive experience were built in. It's got tracking down. It used the Kinect technology from the Xbox in order to figure out where the headset was in 3D space. It's absolutely phenomenal. And it really creates a very strong lock on the subject footage. It even does occlusion. So as you move around objects, and as you move around things, it remembers, it works out that that's actually something that's a three-dimensional shape in your space. And if you place something behind it, and then you actually come to the other side and you try and look back at the object, it realizes that there's something from the real world that occludes it. This is no small feat. This is really very impressive. And they had this working a couple of years ago already. So just showing those proof of concepts. All they need to start working on now is miniaturization, getting things smaller, getting the display technology better, getting something a bit more of a more usable form factor. I think a lot of people look at Google Glass and realize that that's one of the reasons why it probably failed. Is nobody wanted to walk around with this piece of technology on their heads that just made it look so obvious that they had this piece of technology. So the more integrated it is, the more part of your general wardrobe it is, the more successful it's going to be. So, talking about Magic Leap, we are an early access developer, and we're very excited to be exploring what's possible in the world of spatial computing. There's been a ton of hype about Magic Leap over the past few years, and for quite some time people have thought, is this real? Is it not real? All I can say is that it is real, and I wish I could say more, but I can show you this one image that I'm allowed to show you. There's an article on Pitchfork, if anyone wants to read deeper about it, where we've created some pretty groundbreaking interactive experiences with the rock group Sigur Rós. It's really exciting. It's all procedural, it's fully interactive, really exciting stuff, and hopefully this will be released to the public in the not-too-distant future. But that's all. I probably said too much already, but this is a really exciting bit of technology that is on the horizon. So one of the biggest shortfalls of virtual reality, in my opinion, is that it is a very isolating experience. It cuts you off from the real world. It isn't very social. Ironic that Facebook bought it. But augmented reality is completely opposite. Augmented reality is something where you can actually have a shared AR experience with another person, and you can see their reactions as well as actually viewing the virtual content. And this is fascinating because it just opens up way more excitement. So we spotted this pretty early on, and what we did is we developed I'd say it's a technology showcase called Neon Nights. This was a piece of content. Well, not a content. It's an augmented reality experience that we built. It's a 2-player music game. What it does is it allows 2 users who are flying through a landscape to actually see all these protagonists that come up against you, and you have to take them out using a Guitar Hero style guitar. It sounds crazy, but it's actually really quite a bit of fun. Off the back of this, we've had a lot of interest in social AR and how we can actually create more social AR experiences. I think that's the key, is trying to create AR experiences that are ultimately shareable and 2 people can see the same thing. But until these headsets are widely available, we're left with the mobile. And the mobile is a very, very powerful platform, very useful platform to be developing upon. And anyone that knows Apple realize that if you work within their framework, whatever hardware they might come out with in the future, there's a good chance that it's going to be compatible with that. So with these toolkits, essentially they're giving people the opportunity to start developing for the next generation, whatever it may be, which is very exciting. So moving on, augmented reality largely looks sometimes quite fundamental. If you look at the quality of the rendering, it kind of feels like early 3D. Generally, the textures are low res, the polygons are low res. It feels kind of shitty. It doesn't really feel high-end, bespoke. So coming from the visual effects world, we're like, how do we make it better? How do we make it really feel like something that is augmented is actually there? So we developed a pipeline, something called Cyclops, which what it does is it takes the light from any particular room and uses that light in order to illuminate the augmented reality object. So in a dark room, the illumination would be less. In a bright room, illumination would be more. And also can use that room in order to reflect into the object. So here we go is an example that I've got of a test. That rhino that you see on the monitor to the right is being rendered in real time, and it's an augmented reality object. If you look to the left, where Dannika's moving her hand, it's just a box with tracking markers on it. But you can see as she turns it, all the reflections are dynamic, all of the lighting is dynamic. So this is just a tabletop example, but it really improves the overall believability of CGI objects, and it does it in real time. We're incredibly excited about this, and this is something that we're looking to take to bigger objects and trying to figure out how else can you use it, because it's largely we're using it as a visual effects production tool. So in parallel to this, while we were developing this, we also developed something called the Blackbird. So bear with me. We do a lot of car advertising, and every year models change, but they don't necessarily change everything. They change the headlights, they change the wing mirrors, they change small details about the car. So instead of going and recreating the whole, refilming the whole vehicle, auto manufacturers would come to us and say, can you just change the headlights? Can you just change the tail lights? Can you just change small sections? And more we were modifying parts of a vehicle But then it started to become, we got to film this commercial, but we can't actually get hold of the vehicle. Can you guys do make the vehicle in CGI? And then this became a common occurrence. As production cycles reduced, as sequencing became more important, it just became really hard to get our hands on the actual physical vehicle. So we built a car. It's called the Blackbird. It can change shape. Basically, its wheelbase can change. It can go all the way from a compact all the way to a full-size sedan. On top of it, it's got a LiDAR scanner that scans the environment. It's got 4 red cameras that shoot the world, and we then stitch that all together, and we use that in order to reflect into light the car. So I was saying, in conjunction, we were working on Cyclops. So what's really interesting is we thought, okay, let's put these two technologies together. So largely, in order to create the visual effects for the Blackbird, is you had to film the car. It just looked black. It looked like the Batmobile, and you kind of had to say to the director and the DP, listen, trust me, it's going to look great. I know it looks like a black Batmobile right now, but this is going to look like your Toyota Camry. So people were like, okay, I can kind of see that. But we realized that there was a distinct break between what people could see and what they were capturing. So by blending Cyclops and the Blackbird together, we were able to create a very, very high-end, real-time rendering of the car as we were filming it. So imagine on a car shoot, you have the hero car, you have a tracking vehicle. In the tracking vehicle, you have the driver, the DP, the director. And as you're framing the vehicle, you've got a camera. And as you're framing it, we figured a way of actually cloaking, wrapping the Blackbird in real time. But we wanted to try and make it look as real as possible. So we approached Epic. Epic are a games company. They make an amazing engine called Unreal Engine. And we talked about doing a technology showcase with them, where we blended the Cyclops, the Blackbird, and Unreal Engine together. And we created something quite special. I'm going to play a little making of, and then I'll talk about it afterwards.
We believe the future of filmmaking is real-time. By this, we mean that digital VFX can be generated and seen live when shooting on location. And objects within the film can be interactively configured by the viewer. On March 1st at GDC, we demonstrated this by unveiling a groundbreaking project called The Human Race in partnership with Chevrolet and Epic Games. This utilized 3 unique innovations: Epic's Unreal Game Engine, a revolutionary virtual production toolkit called Mill Cyclops, and the Mill Blackbird, an adjustable car rig which captures environmental and motion data. On a shoot, Cyclops stitches 360-degree camera footage and transmits this to the Unreal Engine, producing an AR image of the virtual object, tracked and composited seamlessly into the scene. In this case, it meant a director could frame and see the virtual car on location, reacting live to lighting and environment changes. Brands can also use this to visualize products or objects that are unavailable or don't yet exist. The Human Race also premiered the first ever interactive short film to blend live-action filmmaking with real-time game engine processing. All the cars and visual effects in the film are generated live every 42 milliseconds using the Unreal Engine. With the Configurator app, we personalized the film as it played live on screen. The film was then put through its paces by the public, who were given full control of the configurator to create their own film featuring any version of the Camaro they wanted to see. The Human Race project has generated extraordinary press coverage and viewing figures. The film is now being rolled out to other events and dealerships. Via cloud-based technology, consumers can also configure the film live online. These technologies can be used beyond car advertising. Filmmakers can see a virtual object or a character rendered real-time in any live-action environment. Consumers can personalize their viewing experience by configuring any object on any screen. Brands now have the ability to create and deliver truly responsive advertising content. This is why the future is real-time.
So it's pretty nuts what we're actually doing there. Is we're literally tracking a vehicle traveling at 50 miles an hour down a highway. We're stitching together 4 camera feeds together to create spherical footage. We're then transmitting that to a tracking vehicle. We're then putting that into Unreal. We're rendering it on top of a vehicle that is then ultimately being tracked to that Blackbird, all happening in 1/24th of a second. So it's an extraordinary amount of work. Obviously, this is a very high-end example of augmented reality, but it's just a matter of time before this type of technology can filter down and be more accessible. The common thing that's underpinning all of these different things that I've shown you is it's a completely interesting set of tools. As a visual effects company and design company, you tend to use tools from some of the big manufacturers or from some of the big software companies. What's interesting is that the new players in this realm are actually game engine companies, and these smaller companies, smaller kind of code bases like Cinder, which is a phenomenal C++ visual coding language. Touch Designer, which was a fork from Houdini. I don't know if anyone knows what Houdini is, but all these tools, Unreal, Unity, Cinder, Touch Designer, are really giving access to people to do these types of visual effects, this type of augmented reality in real time. And I think more than just create augmented reality experiences, it's actually also completely revolutionizing the visual effects industry. Traditionally, in order to render those vehicles that I showed you, would take hours, if not days sometimes, to make them look photoreal. But being able to bring that down to something that is real time, the creative possibilities that opens up is extraordinary. Just to show you something else, this is a slight segue from AR, but it's basically using all the same technology as AR. We did this campaign, this project for Monster.com. Initially, it started off as a very shiny 30-second commercial for Monster.com in order to drive you to their website. And it was really great. It was really hard. The fur is hard. To making it look photoreal in the environment was difficult. But then what we realized is that there was a great opportunity here to use all of this real-time technology that we've been using in AR and VR in order to create something quite truly special for Monster. So here's a little behind the scenes that I want to show you that kind of illustrates what I'm talking about.
This is Monster. Monster is big, Monster is fuzzy, and Monster is f***ing expensive and time-consuming to make. So how does a CGI beast of this magnitude thrive in a world that demands speed and efficiency? By using technology in a way that it has never been used before. Meet Virtual Monster, aka Vonster. With real-time rendering technology, a custom-built CGI virtual production pipeline, and other nerdy tech stuff, we turn Monster into a fully interactive puppet that could be reanimated live on set to generate new content instantly. This allowed us to create over 30 videos where the monster was topical, contextual, targeted, and culturally relevant. We had the ability to squeeze Monster into more places and more conversations than any 50-foot creature has ever been before, leading to more impressions, more job applications, and more Monster. And that's just downright awesome.
So that's pretty revolutionary. I hope it came across, but what we did in a single day, on a single capture day, gave us 4 hours of animation that yielded versions that literally the editor could treat like footage. So it was a completely different process to animating traditional CGI characters. Normally you break it down into the shots, you're animating 35 frames or 45 frames, and then you finesse. Here we just created rushes of performance footage where there was a puppeteer puppeteering the monster in real time. So it completely changed the way that the process worked. But I think what's also really interesting is there wasn't any post There wasn't any post-production. All of this was done in real time. All of this was done using Game Engine, which is phenomenal, very creative. And what it also allowed the agency to do is to be very reactive. So if something socially relevant happened, they could bring out their mascot, the company mascot, and do something in real time, which was really phenomenal. It's very exciting for them to be able to do this. So this project wasn't AR, but it easily could have been. I can see taking characters like this, bringing them into the real world, bringing them in on mobile experiences, possibly down the line, the head-mounted experiences. But it all draws from the same place. That pretty much sums up everything I have to talk about today. Excursions in augmented reality. I'd like to thank you for your time. And I'll be here after if anyone wants to ask me any questions specifically. Thank you.